Now here's your host, Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Ooh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your hosts. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees.
What's going on?
Not much, brother. How are you?
Doing all right. How about you?
Good. We're going to first show in a while with just the two of us. We've had guests every week. So kind of a welcome back to normalcy for me and you a little bit. Just shoot the shit a little bit. Go back and forth with each other and some shit that's going on. And because we've had guests lately, we have a lot to talk about in the sports and metal world because, lately it's been just a lot of interviews, and obviously we're starting off on a very somber note, hence the title of the episode. The great classic Cinderella song sums up how we all feel right now. Heartbreak Station. Earlier in the week, we found out we lost, one of the great guitar players of the glam metal era, Cinderella lead guitarist Jeff Labar, part of the classic lineup. I mean, he was there the whole time, except in the very early days of the band, before they ever recorded. Michael Kelly Smith, who later of Britney Fox fame, was obviously their original guitar player. Jeff Labar replaced him early in the game. Dave Snake Sabo, a lot of people don't realize, actually auditioned for Cinderella, and he wanted the gig, but it went to Jeff, and the rest is history. Jeff Labar, great guy from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area, so he's local on the East Coast, definitely local to you. You're in Valley Forge. Jay and I both at one point in our lives lived in Bensalem, just outside of Philadelphia. So Jeff Labar, a local guy. I knew Michael Kelly Smith as a kid. I had bought a guitar from him. So these are all guys that we know or know of, people we know them. So, besides being fans of the genre of music and a huge fans of the band Cinderella, like I said, it's a local guy. It hits home. Rest in peace, Jeff Labar. And then just a day later, the hits keep coming. Longtime touring keyboardist with Cinderella, as well as some other artists. I know he toured with Lou Gramm on his first solo record after Foreigner. Gary Corbett passed away. He had been battling cancer. There had been a GoFundMe page set up for him. A lot of people don't realize Gary Corbett was actually a co-writer of Cyndi Lauper's big hit from the She's So Unusual album, She Bop, one of 4 top 10 singles on that record. Gary Corbett was a writer of that track, and it's not often that a band loses 2 members in a week. So it's rough for Cinderella and for the metal community.
Yeah, it's definitely devastating. I've seen, I got to be honest, quite frankly, I've seen more tributes. Now, obviously, that's because he's local, but I've seen even like national acts. The tributes that are coming out for Jeff are absolutely amazing. A lot of people are,
That doesn't surprise me. Cinderella's one of the, local, obviously, but one of the biggest bands of the era, and definitely, in my opinion, one of the most well-rounded, talented bands of the era. Night Songs kind of like they went with the glam look on the album cover because that was the look of the time. But anybody who knows Cinderella knows there's so much more than that. Definitely a harder edge record, Night Songs. Definitely wasn't like Poison by any means. Obviously, it had elements of the glam sound, but then with each record, they matured in their sound. Long Cold Winter definitely brought a lot more of the blues into it. Little more diverse style of songwriting, and on with. They kept getting more bluesy with each record. Heartbreak Station, and then Still Climbing. Still Climbing is a 10-song record that plays almost an hour long. You're talking 5-6 minute songs every track. So great band, great national act.
Yeah, I think Jeff is definitely underrated. He's another one of those guitar, and quite honestly, like, you can definitely recognize as soon as you hear any song from Cinderella, you can tell it's just a different style tune. How every guitarist kind of has their own niche, when it comes to, style and sound. Obviously when you hear Slash, it's Slash. When you hear Eddie Van Halen, it's Eddie Van Halen. The same thing's true with Jeff. Especially with that bluesy Southern type style. Now, obviously, the first record, Night Songs, honestly, that was the first glam metal song that I actually remember where I was at when I heard it. I was actually at a local skating rink in Bensalem. It was actually called Cornwall Skating Rink. And, obviously, they always played at that time when you went to roller rinks. Obviously they played a lot of pop, but they also, obviously, during that time when around 88.
When we were skating, the two things you heard were like freestyle music.
Glam metal.
Oh, I'm fascinated by your love, boy. Like that type of shit. And fucking glam metal. That's
Correct.
what you listened to. That's what you heard.
Yeah. So I'll never forget it, though. It's like, it's very vivid to me, the memory when I heard the song. It was actually Nobody's Fool. And when it came on like that just the slow intro, and after hearing it, I was like blown away. And I was like, I got to find out who that was. And I remember I went to one of the employees at the the refreshment area, and I asked the guy, and he was like, "Oh, that's Cinderella. Like, they're huge. They're from around here." And that was kind of like the first time I ever heard Cinderella. And, from there, obviously I became a huge fan. You mentioned Still Climbing. I think that's an album that's totally slept on. Like, I know it came out in 94, and that's probably a lot of the reason why, because the era when it came out, obviously that was the grunge, grunge had taken over.
Yeah. The script had flipped.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't even let's correct it. Diehards like us have heard the record, but a lot of people that are just, fly-by-night metal fans, casuals, they probably never even heard Still Climbing. But to be honest with you,
except Hot and Bothered, because that came out a couple years earlier. It was on the Wayne's World soundtrack.
Well, true, and
they held off. Yeah,
I know another track, "Talk Is Cheap," was actually, I think, written in previous to the actual album, and it was kind of like a re-record type thing. But overall, that album, that really shows like the influence of Jeff, because he had a ton to do with the songwriting on all the albums, but I believe on that album he kind of really shined, and you could just hear it like track by track. I mean, Hot and Bothered is definitely got that blues style. I mean, like you already mentioned it. Besides Night Songs, because Night Songs was a little bit more metal, I think each succeeding record kind of went more and more towards, more of a blues sound and a hard rock Southern type sound.
Yeah. And I know we're doing a tribute to Jeff here, but let's not forget Tom Kiefer. Tom Kiefer, I mean, one of the best songwriters of the era. So when we're talking about the evolution of that sound, I mean, Tom Kiefer has a lot to do with that. And my thing is, to me, not so much about who wrote what, but I just think listening to Jeff and Tom play together, that was the signature sound of Cinderella. That like kind of like how you hear Tipton and Downing. Cinderella had that same thing. I mean, because Tom Kiefer played lead as well as sang along with Jeff's leads. And they would switch off. And I think that had a lot to do with the sound. I'm going to see the songwriting credits actually on Still Climbing, but I can't pull them up that quick. I'm not so sure Jeff's contribution to the writing process. Admittedly, I'm not sure, because I think most of it was Tom Kiefer. No, but it's just the sound, the way they play together. You know what I mean? To me, that defines Cinderella's sound. And Jeff's stage presence was phenomenal. One of my favorite Cinderella performances ever, and I posted it on our Facebook page today. One of my favorite concerts ever. It just holds a dear place in my heart because I remember like watching it like on pay-per-view when it happened. I watched it live. Was the Moscow Music Peace Festival in '89, and I actually thought Cinderella might have been the best band that performed that day. They were on point. Their sound was great. They were tight. Everything. And Jeff Labar was awesome in that show. The whole band was. So,
yeah. I mean, and let's not forget Gary Corbett too. Like, I mean, I know he's obviously the lesser known of the two, but he was a big influence with Kiss too. I mean, he played on a lot of their records.
Well, he was a big touring musician with them. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously 2 huge losses. I mean, everybody that I talked to, like a lot of people that I know knew him personally, Jeff. And everybody that I've talked to, like, there's not one person that says anything bad about the guy. They said, in fact, everything I hear about him is that he was one of the nicest guys in metal. Like, he was just a nice guy, and he would always kind of, you know, help other musicians. Like, anytime somebody was like, you know, met him for the first time, he would always kind of, you know, give them, you know, credit and kind of, you know, give them some tips or whatever it might be. And I think also a big thing about it, him being local, it was kind of like the fact that he made it, it became kind of a great story and, you know, an inspiration for a lot of the other local musicians in this area. Guys like Reggie Wu, you know, guys that were in, you know, also up and comings that's
a great point.
Ended up becoming, you know, great in later years, because I think Jeff was like, not that there wasn't, let's face it, there's a lot of local music talent in the local area, you know, especially up near you. I mean, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, New Jersey's got a ton, but I'm just saying.
The Northeast has always had a great music scene, you know, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey. We've always had a great music scene.
It's crazy that, you know, I was kind of like looking and doing some research, and I didn't realize that first record, Night Songs, a lot of that record was produced literally 5 minutes from my house where I live now in Gladwin, PA. I forget the name of the studio.
Yeah. I can tell you right now.
It's in Gladwin. It's literally, I looked it up. It was like 5 minutes from here, from King of Prussia.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's still open. The Cajun Studios. That's where Cinderella used to do all their recording. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know if it was still open. I was just kind of curious, but the crazy thing, there is a YouTube video, a short video. It's
you can see them recording in there. Yeah,
and it showed like footage of them. You know, I believe they were recording. Maybe it was the third album, Heartbreak Station. But they, you know, and Kiefer kind of sat down at the piano and he said, "This is the exact piano where I wrote
Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone." Very cool video.
Yeah, pretty cool. Like, to actually see him sit down at the piano and say, "Yup, this right here is where I wrote it," and he started playing it. So it was like cool.
Yeah, and you know what? While we're memorializing, you know, metal legends that have passed, like I said, we've had guests recently, so I don't know if we ever addressed this on the show, but we'd be remiss and doing a disservice if we didn't. And I just thought of it, and we should do it now. But we also recently lost Johnny Solinger of Skid Row. The guy spent, you know, a decade and a half in Skid Row. Obviously, everybody thinks of Sebastian Bach as the vocalist of Skid Row because he is the classic lineup. We get it. But Johnny Solinger, I mean, he was a soldier for Skid Row. I mean, he did justice to the older songs as best as he could. Nobody's going to be Sebastian Bach. You know, in addition to bringing his own, you know, style and sound to the band, they put out a couple records, Thick Skin, Revolutions Per Minute, and then they had the EPs, the United World Rebellion EPs, part 1 and 2. Part 3 was supposed to come out. Don't know if it ever will. But Johnny Solinger, like I said, he was a soldier in Skid Row. He's the longest tenured singer in the history of the band at this point, even though nobody thinks of it. And he recently passed away from liver failure. And I don't think we ever addressed it on the show because we've had guests, and I just by coincidence, I don't think we ever did. So let's do it now. Rest in peace, Johnny Solinger. Another very big loss. Great guy, and I've heard nothing but great things about him. Rest in peace, Johnny Solinger. We're huge Skid Row fans, and we know he was a great guy. And we know the guys in Skid Row were really broken up by that. And it was very telling. You know, Johnny Solinger's been out of the band for a few years, and they were all posting tons of tributes to him. You know, Rachel Bolan, Snake Sable, all the guys. So rest in peace to him as well.
Yeah,
you know?
too many going way too soon. I mean, it just seems like it's daily now.
Yeah, well, it's a sign of our age, dude.
I know, man.
But anyway, let's move on to something a little bit. I don't know if I'd call it positive because I don't know how Jason feels about the current state of baseball. But let's move on to something that hopefully will be a positive change in Major League Baseball. You know, obviously due to COVID, there's been some rule changes that, I mean, not that long ago would have seemed insane if somebody even suggested it. Starting extra innings with a runner on second base. What? Who would have? What? 7-inning games in doubleheaders like this would have been like what? some of the stuff that's going on in baseball in the last decade, it wasn't that long ago where you would have said, no way in hell would that ever happen. I mean, this is crazy, crazy stuff that we've been watching.
Cringeworthy.
What's that?
I said cringeworthy.
Cringeworthy or not, because some people like it, but I don't know if cringeworthy it might be cringeworthy to me or you, but I'm not even going there because some people tend to say they like it. But I think unfathomable, I think, is a better word. Unfathomable. Look, they would never do that. You know what I mean? You'd say it would never happen, but it has happened. So, 7-inning doubleheaders have happened. So, Rob Manfred has recently been quoted as saying that they're going to do away with the 7-inning doubleheaders, which I thought was only a matter of time anyway, because it was only implemented for COVID. I understood it, I guess, at the time. I didn't like it, but I got it. With the doubleheader, the idea with 7-inning doubleheaders is to get the players in and out of the stadium as fast as possible. So everybody's, in and out, not around each other, spreading COVID and whatever. I mean, I get it, I guess. But I thought it was a matter of time that they get rid of it. So no shock there. I'm happy to get rid of it. The other thing is getting rid of the runner on second base. This was another thing to shorten games during COVID, get teams in and out of the stadium as fast as possible. And then this year with fans being back, get the fans in and out as fast as possible. So you don't have these 18-inning games going on and on with COVID going on. So I get it. I mean, those things don't shock me. I think the biggest one that's been talked about, besides bringing the designated hitter to the National League, which I think the writing's been on the wall for a while, but the other one is banning the shift. What are your thoughts? Banning the defensive shift in Major League Baseball. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I actually kind of got into a little Twitter war about this one. Honestly, in my hardest of heart opinions, I'm not in favor of banning it, but I definitely think they need to limit it. And the reason that I give, and the reason I have, and obviously everybody has their own opinion, I just believe that the way that pitching is today, it's almost, let's face it, it's pretty much impossible for a hitter when it's 98 to 99 to 100 on the hands to go the opposite field. And you have some of these shifts where the shifts are basically all four infielders on the other, on one side of the diamond.
And because they're playing everybody to pull.
Pretty much. And I just think it's too much. I think there needs to be a limit on it because I think why even have positions then? Why have a third baseman if he's not going to play at third base? I mean, it's just my opinion. Now, you could come in.
I'll come in. Okay, I'll come in. It seems like you want me to, so I will. On the surface, I wouldn't want to ban the defensive shift because I think it's just adding a strategic element to the game. And I like strategy. For the same reason that I would never have wanted the designated hitter in the National League, I kind of didn't have any problem with the shift. Like the designated hitter, by having a DH, now you've eliminated the double switch. A manager doesn't have to worry in advance, my pitcher's due up second in the next inning. I can pinch hit for him or I can double switch now. So I have a hitter up in his spot the next inning. So that way I can bring in my reliever, and rather than having to pitch hit, I can get a couple innings out of my reliever and bring in another guy to hit and switch the lineup up. And all that strategy is eliminated by having the DH because now you just plug a guy in and the manager just sits there and does nothing. So the defensive shift kind of adds strategy the way not having a DH does. I kind of like that aspect of it. You're playing a guy based on where you think he's going to hit the ball. But the problem is now I'm kind of agreeing with you because it's been proven that hitters are inept. They're incapable of also being strategic to play against the shift. And I know what you're saying. It's hard to go the other way with a 98-mile-per-hour fastball in on the hands. And it is. You're right. But here's a concept. Bunt. Lay down a bunt. What is going on? It's embarrassing. I think it was a year ago, maybe the year before, where it was like a total bunting situation. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's runner on second, nobody outs, tie game, bottom 9. Not even runner on second because he's in scoring position already. Let's say runner on first. You want to bunt him into scoring position. Runner on first, nobody out, bottom 9. They asked Dom Smith to bunt to get the runner, which historically would have always been the play in a tie game, bottom 9 at home. You bunt the guy in a scoring position. You give yourself 2 outs to get a hit and drive that guy in. That was baseball 101 for 150 years. Dom Smith said he didn't know how to bunt. He said he never bunted. Now, I get he's a power hitter. I get that. So I do respect the fact that he wouldn't typically be asked to bunt. So this is an extreme example in that sense. But never in the world, no matter who the hitter was in the past, would you have ever heard somebody say, I never bunted. Bro, when we grew up, it was part of like your daily batting practice. At the end of batting practice, you'd bunt. You'd have another thing you did when you were in Little League, high school, any level of baseball, you had sliding drills where guys would run and they'd slide feet first into second base, go back to first, get back in the line, run and slide into second base, go back to first, get back in the line. Guys, you do this 20 times in a line. These were basic fundies, as Keith Hernandez likes to say, fundies, fundamentals. But Jay, if you want to beat the shift sometimes, you can bunt. When you got everybody playing on one side of the bag and the whole other side of the field has nobody there, fucking bunt. Lay down a bunt. What are you doing? What are you doing? Lay down a goddamn motherfucking bunt. Sorry for my language, but that's how much it drives me batty. It's crazy. You can beat the shift every time if you did it. And then by doing that, you'd force them to not shift. But the fact that it's been proven that people are incapable of playing fundamental baseball, you're right. We have to take the extreme measure of banning the shift. So I'm kind of in agreement with you because it's pathetic watching guys ground into the shift or strike out over and over and over and over and over again.
Dude, wow. I love it. I love your rants. Honest to God, and dude, you just nailed it because that is the reason why I want to get rid of it. It's not that I don't like strategy. I am the same as you. But the problem I have is baseball is being ruined because it's being run by freaking nerds. Analytics are the problem with baseball. And we've said this 1,700 times, Aaron. We could have 1,700 shows. Analytics are killing baseball, and analytics are the reason why many of the rules are stupid or need to be changed. Because analytics would tell you that analytics don't look at the fundamentals. Analytics look at, let me throw a pitch as fast as I can so the guy strikes out. Or let me not worry about striking out because maybe once or twice I'm going to make contact and hit a freaking home run.
Dude, listen to me. You're right, though. But here's the conundrum with it. On the one hand, the shift is a direct result of analytics. And it might be one of the few things that came out of it that to me made a lot of sense because you're playing because you're used. But that's the other part of it. Analytics is why these guys are so thick-headed. What? Think about it. Because of analytics, nobody can bunt. Everybody's pulling the ball. And then also because of analytics, you're like, oh, well, since nobody can bunt and everybody's pulling the ball, we'll just play all the defense on one side. Like,
it's disgraceful.
What? Forget disgraceful. It boggles fucking. It doesn't make any sense. By the way, all my F words are why we got a explicit rating on fucking Apple Podcasts. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Yeah, explicit.
We got rated explicit.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I'm just losing it right now. No, but dude, think about it. Think about that for 1 minute, Jay.
Base.
Because of analytics, guys only strike out or walk or pull. But also because of analytics, the analytical minds have realized that and then said, well, we're going to play all our defenders on one side. If that's not the stupidest thing I've ever heard, I don't know what is. Then the other analytic guys, the same ones that are saying play all the defenders on one side, why don't you say, well, lay down a bunt? Wouldn't that be analytical? Wouldn't that be analytical?
Yeah, so the
here, let me lay it on a bunt because there's nobody there.
So the people.
What am I missing, Jay?
Yeah, no, you just hit it on the head again. The people running the analytics are not smart enough to realize that they could change the analytics and go the opposite direction. So I think the bottom line is we both agree that there should be a limit on the shift then. I think that's kind of what I'm getting from you, that you do agree with me on that. I mean, we didn't really talk. I mean, we kind of glanced over the other ones, but I'm definitely obviously in favor of removing the 7-inning doubleheader. I'd like to go back.
Hold on, Jay. Before we change the subject, We got a comment here from Big 1234.
Okay.
He said, it's not just analytics, the coaches also. Coaches play a big part.
Big T,
I agree.
baby.
I agree.
Big T, thank you.
Thank you for watching.
He's 100%
I agree
right.
with that. But what you have to realize, because of analytics, a lot of these managers aren't the ones making the moves on the field anymore. They're basically puppets. Managers nowadays are almost like caretakers. They're just like putting the lineup card in, and they're taking orders from upstairs. It's almost like back in the day when the manager called the bullpen and said, hey, get so-and-so up. Now the manager's getting a call from upstairs telling him to call the bullpen to get so-and-so up.
No,
you know what I mean?
But I do agree with Big T to a certain extent that a lot of it is the coaching. You got to look low at the lower ranks, not just Major League Baseball. And I mean, I know we're not a local show. We're a national show.
Well, hold on. He said that's their fault for being puppets. But you got to keep in mind, if they weren't puppets, they wouldn't have the job. These organizations are looking for yes men. That's why guys that, like, for example, when we grew up, like a Dallas Green, who was like an old school guy, you know, a drill sergeant type, did it his way. He wouldn't be employable in today's game. Now, I'm not saying I like that. I think that sucks. I agree with you. Well, but the reality is these are the guys that are going to get the jobs, the yes men, the guys that are going to be organizational guys. They're going to do what the organization wants. Now, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jay, but I wanted to get to that comment. What were you saying?
Well, no, I do, but I do think that Big T brings up a good point, and I think that a lot of the problems also stem from the way that the kids are being taught to play. Because let's face it, Dom Smith was once a younger kid. If he doesn't know how to bunt, that goes back a lot longer than just.
Of course, but that's because that's the way they
want how to bunt. That means to me that he didn't learn how to bunt in when he was playing in Little
League even. But I agree. But dude, that's
egregious.
But that's what it is. It's like I can't remember the word I'm looking for right now. It's institutional. That's just the way the game is. As an institution, it goes down to the lowest levels. Even in Little League, they have like stringent pitch counts. It's like everything has changed. It's not like when we grew up. Jay, when we were kids, me and you, we could vouch for it. We used to have in your front yard with tennis balls. We would throw them as hard as we could, which is the equivalent of growing up throwing 100 miles an hour because it was as hard as we could throw. But we would throw the ball to each other as hard as we could, sometimes all day. We probably threw 300 pitches each.
We played home run hitting contests.
Home run derbies.
The wires, yes.
The wires were home runs, yeah. But and then my buddy Brett in Jersey, we would use even sometimes baseballs because we would play against the brick wall. I remember throwing fastballs, curveballs, hard as we could. Never blew my arm out. I have a torn rotator cuff, and it's my other arm from doing chimney sweeps, not my throwing arm.
So we were basically nerds ourselves, just not analytics nerds. We were
that's
nerds.
a whole other conversation.
We were nerds of the game. Let's face it. We love the game.
We love the game. But to the point I'm making is there's also the aspect of like use it or lose it. I mean, yeah, GM and owners are lost following later. Well, the game is a lost cause in many ways, in my opinion. You know, we go on all day about it.
Hence the reason why I agree with getting rid of the shift, and not because not for the right reason.
Not for the right reasons.
Correct.
I agree.
But I didn't know where you kind of glossed over the other couple ones, which we both, I think, agreed on the taking away the guy on second base. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous to me. And the 7-inning doubleheader, I could do away with that too, because I like the 9 innings. That's the sanctity of the game. However, I'm definitely, and I don't know if you agree with me, I don't want the DH. I wish they would get rid of the DH in the American League. So I'm the opposite. I don't know if you agree with that, but
honestly,
I hate the DH.
As far as the DH goes,
I like watching guys like Jake DeGrom and Zach Wheeler who could actually hit.
Well, of course, I'm with you 100%. I've never liked the DH. If it was up to me, it never would have been instituted. But I will say this. It's never going away. So it's almost like if I want to be a baseball fan, I have to accept the fact that it's there. And I will tell you this, selfishly, in the last couple of years, I like realizing how it would help the Mets. I became open to it. Like, for example, Dom Smith's a better defensive first baseman than Pete Alonso, but Dom Smith's playing the outfield. You bring the DH to the National League, now you could DH Alonso and have Dom at first. But that's a stupid, selfish, temporary reason to have it.
That's
realistically, I don't want it.
But I think we both agree that, dude, I loved watching small ball. Nothing more.
Oh, it's the best.
Back in the day when we've talked about these teams, those 80s Cardinals teams were the absolute most fun to watch because they played small ball and that's how they won and they had good pitching.
Well, dude, let me explain.
They won a lot of games, like a shit ton of games, like 2-1. And you know, a lot of those runs that they scored were like Vince Coleman stealing a base and then going to third on an error and then, you know, going home on, you know, it was just that kind of stuff.
Well, and that's where I was going to go. That was what was exciting about it. And we've talked about this on the show before. Besides all the shit we just talked about, the analytics and the way the game is being played has made it boring. Dude, every game is 3.5, 4 hours to play 9 innings. That's crazy. Like you used to see games that were 2 hours a night, you know, 9-inning games that were 2 hours. You can't play a 7-inning game in 3 hours now. And the bottom line is, I've said it before. Sometimes you're watching 3 hours of the pitcher and the catcher play catch because nobody's making contact. It's strikeouts or walks or the occasional 3-run bomb. When we were watching those teams back in the day, you could watch any older game. Almost every pitch contact was made. Strikeouts were a big deal. That's why Dwight Gooden was called Dr. K. And Dwight Gooden's strikeout totals, even in 85, would be average in today's game. Everybody's striking out a batter or more per inning now. It means nothing. So the bottom line is you might see a 3-pitch inning quite often, like 3 groundouts, switch sides. So it was a fast-paced game, and guys were getting a hit, a stolen base, or a hit, bunt him to second. He steals third, scores on a sac fly. Next guy flies out. 3 outs, 1-0 game. We move on. Next guy leads off with a triple, scores on a sac fly. Next guy singles, steals second, gets thrown out, whatever. I'm just making it up. But it was a lot of base running. It was a lot of defensive action. The game was fast-paced. Now guys are standing around. Flowers are growing faster than they catch a ball.
Dude, you probably had back in the 80s, maybe 10, 15 guys per season hit over 300.
Well,
now
no, that's not true. You had a lot more guys hitting over 300.
Dude,
now look at the game. The batting average is 235 in the game.
That's my point. My point is I'm not necessarily saying I liked offense per se.
You're saying I think you were saying there was more contact back in the day, better batting.
I miss seeing a lot of guys hit for 300 and having an average chase as opposed to having one guy hit 330 and
I get your point. It didn't come off that way. I get it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You're right. I was saying it wrong, but I miss having like a batting title chase. We don't have that anymore.
Well, that's also because the batting average has been devalued as a statistic. In the land of analytics, batting average is devalued. It's all about OPS.
Once again,
annoying.
Which is why
we're watching 4-hour games where the paint dries on the wall.
Tired of baseball. I mean, and I had this argument with someone the other day. I said, I'm sick of baseball, and baseball is not good right now. It's not, dude. If you want to be honest, baseball is not good.
The quality of the game is gone downhill.
It's not good.
The quality of the game. Anyway, before we move on past baseball, trade deadline is here. You got any big predictions? Who's getting moved?
Well, I do know that
just make a bold prediction.
Well, no, I heard I'll name both of our teams. Obviously, you're a Mets guy. I'm a Phillies guy. And I did hear Chris Bryant's name being mentioned for both teams. So
that's where I was going to go. Yeah.
I'm at the point where I've gotten into so many Twitter beefs over Phillies trade arguments and all my Phillies takes because I'm told all I do is complain, which, you know what? I do complain a lot because I'm passionate about my team. Just like you've been there with the Mets, dude. You've been there. You had years where you're just sick of everything. That's how I've been with the Phillies. But needless to say, I still love the Phillies. And if there is one, honestly, I love Chris Bryant, and I think he could make a difference. But if you're going to ask me what I think the Phillies should do, I think they need a closer. And there's a guy on the Pittsburgh Pirates named Richard Rodriguez. He's very cheap contract, and I think that would be a good target. I don't think the Phillies are going to make a big move unless if they pull off a couple wins here, though, it might change, dude, because they just won today, game 1 of the doubleheader, And I could see the Phillies buying. I definitely think the Mets are going to buy.
I'm not so sure. I feel like the Mets are going to be in it for a pitcher.
Well, that's
I think that's what they should be in it for. And the ironic part about that is the Mets arguably have the best pitching in the sport, but they've also been very thinned out by injury. I think the Mets offense has totally underperformed. So statistically speaking, on paper, you'd be like, oh, the Mets need a bat. But I don't think anybody with any knowledge of the game or the Mets thinks the Mets need a bat. The Mets, I think the expectation is that they're going to start raking in the second half. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks Lindor is going to hit 220 or McNeil's going to hit 250 or Dom Smith's going to hit 225. So these guys they got a lot of hits in their bats. And then you're getting J.D. Davis back. That's a big return. I think the Mets are going to hit. So as great as the pitching has been, the Mets need an arm. So I'm not going to make any bold predictions. It's not my style, but I think the Mets are going to be in the market for an arm. To me, an interesting name that I think the Phillies should be interested in, contract or not, would be Craig Kimbrell. He's returned to like prime form. The Cubs are going to fire sale. Cubs are going to unload everybody, I think.
Yeah, my only concern with Kimbrell is he's going to cost a lot. And I don't know if I'm the Phillies with as least amount of prospects that they have. They already have an inept farm system. I don't want to give away one of my
fair
2 points.
That's fair point.
That's my concern. If they could get if they could get Kimbrell and not give up, say a Micah Bell or what's the guy's name? The shortstop Stott. There are number 2 top 2 prospects. Then I would go for Kimbrell for a year to try to get us over the hump.
So you don't think the Dodgers are going to try to unload Bauer, huh? That's a joke.
Bauer. And then
oh my God, he's the most untouchable player.
And now you had the other knucklehead today on the Nationals that just went on the
Starlin Castro. I don't know any details about that yet. Do you?
Well, they didn't say anything. They just said domestic violence, but can't be good. So anyway,
time will tell. Anyway, I guess another big thing we wanted to get into this week, the Richard Sherman arrest. I'm sure everybody has seen the video now. If you watch the video, you just see an enraged Richard Sherman like punching at the door, let me in. I forget exactly what he said. Apparently he had been drinking. His wife called 911, said, he's out there. He's intoxicated. They said he's threatening to kill himself. He had supposedly drank an entire bottle of vodka and a bottle of Hennessy or something like that. He had also crashed his car into a construction site. So a whole mess of charges. They ended up only giving him misdemeanor charges. He did get a DUI. I think he got like criminal trespass and some other charges. But like, I think that the big thing coming from the story is the mental health aspect of it. And how the media initially, ran to depict him almost as a criminal. The immediate rush to judgment was that he was like this crazy guy banging the door down. But I think a lot of people didn't necessarily believe that because this is a guy that went to Stanford. I mean, you don't go to Stanford just for athletics. You have to get good grades too. So I mean, at Stanford, that's, the guy's an intelligent guy, very well spoken. So I think it did come as a shock to a lot of people. But I think the big thing coming out, like you said, is the mental illness aspect. But you know what, dude? I was going to throw something else at you that I don't know if you'd thought of. And I know you were going to get into the mental illness aspect, but let me throw this at you. The thing that I find so telling, besides the mental illness aspect, which has even been talked about by Richard Sherman himself, ESPN, on down the line, and there's a lot to be said about that. The media rushing to judge a person when they might be going through a hard time, because apparently Richard Sherman has been. Apparently friends had said he'd been going through hard times the last couple months. Again, on the 911 call, his wife said he threatened to kill himself. Subsequent to that, she said he's a great guy. This is totally out of character. So obviously there's a mental health crisis going on with him. But the thing I wanted to say, I know I'm being long-winded here, but I just wanted to give the background. I think it also speaks volumes about the culture we live in, where celebrity or not, everything is videotaped. My thing is this. How many of us on any given night at any given time in our lives could have been Richard Sherman this past Wednesday night or whatever it was? How many times in our lives have we made mistakes where maybe we got drunk and we got in a fight? We got in a fight at our house and punched a door. We did something dumb when we were young. All of us have these moments in our lives. And to say we never had them, then you're on a soapbox, thrown from a glass house. Bullshit. Everybody has down times in their lives. So I think we all go through mental health crises. And I think that's fair. but I think it also speaks volumes about the lack of respect for people in our culture, the lack of privacy for celebs and non-celebs. I mean, at one point, it was like, okay, you're a celebrity. This comes with the territory, which Richard Sherman is, in fairness. But now we've gotten to a point where you could be Joe Schmo down the street and you might lose your temper and somebody's filming you. And if they present that video in a certain aspect to the public without full context of the video, you might look like an animal or a criminal. And the court of public opinion is going to hang you guilty until proven innocent. I mean, we see it every day. We see it every day. Like you could have, I'm making this completely up right now, but I'm sure this shit happens. You could have a guy walk into a restaurant and it's another guy that might be just drunk at a bar for no reason other than to be a drunk prick, says, "Hey, asshole, you got a problem?" And then the guy walking in goes, "What did you say?" And then the guy sitting starts filming him after he just provoked him. And now the guy that's standing getting filmed looks like the guy instigating the whole thing, when in reality, the guy sitting holding the phone instigated it. I imagine this shit happens all the time. And we all contribute to it, as is the case with this Richard Sherman thing, because everybody's got these ring things on their doors. You go to anybody's door, you're being filmed. So the same people that are complaining about Big Brother and lack of privacy are the same ones contributing to it. You know, fucking cameras on this, cameras on that, rings, videos going to your cell phone. We are living in a world where everything is filmed and there's no privacy and you can't get away with anything. You could have a crisis moment that could just be just that, a crisis moment, and you're going to get hung by the court of public opinion. So I know your initial reaction to it, because we spoke prior to doing the show, was how the media just hangs people. But I'm not so sure it's just the media. I think it's all of us. I actually read some stories where the media did bring up the mental health aspect and then said, if you're going through something, call this hotline. So in fairness to some media stuff I did read, they're the ones that did. But the fact that it's everybody. I'm not just talking about Richard Sherman now. I'm saying it could be anybody at any given time. Everything is on video. And you could have a bad day and it could ruin the rest of your life. And this is an example of that. What are your thoughts? I know I rambled, but
I wouldn't. No, I enjoy when you ramble. I mean, you're not rambling. You're being passionate about something that you feel and you believe. I mean, I kind of actually have to agree with you. I think it's not just the media. I guess my initial thought was yes, because the media was the one that kind of portrayed him that way. But you're right. If you really look and you peel back the layers, you're right. I would probably say you're right. We're all guilty.
Everybody.
Of it. I think it speaks to really the bigger problem, which isn't just media. It's social media. Because I think social media is the bigger blanket of the actual, news media. Because
and that's the technology in general. The technology that's supposed to help us hurts us.
Well, social media, it encapsulates everything. I mean, you're talking everything pretty much like you hit it on the head. Everything's being filmed. Everyone's taking selfies. Everyone's doing video. I mean, TikTok. Like, there's just so much social media that it's almost like social media has become it's such a normal part of people's lives that it's actually ruining people's lives.
Totally.
Dude, you're right. I guess my whole thing with the Richard Sherman thing was, and, forgive me if I'm not trying to get upset, but I struggle with mental illness. You know that.
Of course.
I've overcome alcoholism, and I just feel like a lot of times, the way that these, media outlet, I mean, the way that it came out was like Richard Sherman is this criminal. And I don't know if you saw his heartfelt letter today that he put out an apology. I mean, the guy is definitely struggling, and it's sad and disgraceful to me that he was portrayed as this like violent Listen, like you said, we all have moments, of mental, where we have mental distress and we're struggling. But there are certain people that struggle with it more than others. Agreed. And alcoholism is just another it's another instance of mental illness because they go hand in hand.
Oh, it could be the symptom or the cause.
And exactly. And my point is I feel sorry for the guy because I I really do have a soft spot for people that struggle with mental illness. And when I saw that, that was my first thought was like, why are they saying like he's this like the way, and I'm not saying maybe there was a couple medias that did use it for good, and kudos to them for that. But I'm just talking about like the overall initial report where it was just basically like, oh, Richard Sherman, and then like, they keep showing these videos. I wish they wouldn't even show the videos, dude. It makes me sick. Like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch Richard Sherman pounding on his father-in-law's door.
It's nobody's business. That's
exactly
my point.
That's my point. There's no fucking privacy. Sorry.
So I think we do really agree here. I think it's obvious that we acknowledge he's going through a mental health crisis. And I guess what I'm saying is I agree 100%. I feel for the guy, but more so than that, to me, I relate to it. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I've been in those positions. We've all been in those positions. People that say they never have are just not honest, in my opinion. I've had blow-ups with my mom, with my sister, with my wife. We've all done it. And sometimes with you, we've had blow-ups. Me and you. We're friends 30 years, 40 years. We had fights. Sometimes you say things you don't mean. You do things you don't mean. And sometimes you're really upset. Maybe you're going through something. Nobody knows what you're going through on a given day or what you may have been through. And when something like the difference is nobody was filming it. Nobody was filming it. It was for you to reconcile with yourself and your family members and your friends and whoever was involved in whatever you guys were going through. Now you have to reconcile everything that's personal to you with the world. And that's not the way it should be. And again, Richard Sherman is a celebrity by virtue of being a famous athlete. There was a time where only the famous would even be expected to deal with this publicly. Now, we all are. We all are, and I don't agree with it. So
Aaron,
if Richard Sherman was Joe Smo down the street, I'd say the same thing.
I mean,
and wait, here's the thing. I'm sorry. Let me just finish this.
Okay.
Not even the fact that Richard Sherman is a celeb, even that, at one point, it would have just been, oh, we heard he did this. There was a 911 call. There wouldn't have been video of it. So now you even got video of it, celeb or not. And it's video because of their own fucking doorbell camera. I mean, I know that everybody wants the best security systems and they want the best iPhones and they want the best this and the best. But at what point is it just enough is enough? Do you really need everything filmed? You really need everything filmed? Everything broadcast? Is it that? Did you need it? Is it really worth it? This is a question I ask the world. Is it worth it? Do you need all this technology? Do you need everything videotaped? Are you really that worried that your house is going to get robbed? Really? When you live in fucking suburbia somewhere? The people that need those Ring cameras the most are the ones that can't afford it. Living in some fucking ghetto. That's all I got to say about that.
No, I mean, I'm just glad that at the end of the day, I'm hoping that it's going to be a healthy outcome for all involved. I'm hoping that Richard Sherman gets the help, which I think he will. And maybe, something good will come out of it. I'm glad that something worse didn't happen. What if the police officers that came there shot him?
I was thinking that.
And once again, I hate to, kind of, get really personal here, but dude, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm an example of white privilege. I assaulted a police officer and I'm alive. If I was black,
why don't you tell the audience? This is a very personal moment. This is a personal moment.
I could pretty much guarantee if I was black, I'd be dead.
Why don't you, if you're going here,
I'm just going to go there.
Why don't you just tell us what happened?
Well, I don't remember what happened because I was so
drunk. You were drunk.
I assaulted a police officer. I basically, tried to beat the shit out of a police officer. So
because you were drunk and they came to check on you and that's what you were doing. And then they wanted to arrest you because I guess you were being belligerent.
So I just want everybody out there to know that white privilege is a thing because I'm living proof of it. And it upsets me when people say that it's not the truth. And
that's
that
a great
privilege is not real because it is.
Take.
And that's why I am so passionate about, when I stick up for people and when I have my takes, because I stand with people for that. And that's what upsets me when I see these kind of things. And I'm just, like I said, I'm glad nothing worse came of it.
Dude, it took a lot of guts to come out and say that. And I'm proud of you and I love you. And I will say this, I think we both agree that we can relate. Like, I could picture myself in that video. Like, I've had those moments. I'm putting my heart out there, just like you. I know we can both relate to, like, being, if like a camera could have captured me at my worst at times in my life, I'd be ashamed of myself. We all would. I'm confident enough to say that I did it, I had bad moments, and I think I feel comfortable in the fact of saying I think most of us have had those moments because you were unhappy, or something was wrong, you weren't yourself. We've all been through it. We've all been through it. The only difference was there wasn't Ring cameras on our doors, cell phones.
Yeah, we had privacy.
People instigating and filming it. Things. It's just something that people need to start thinking about. I mean, there needs to be a turning point as far as like the way we look at mental illness in this country and the way we're crucifying people, guilty before innocent, and just judging everybody.
Amen.
But let's get to something a little bit more positive before we start breaking out in tears here.
Yeah, I don't want to have that happen here, man, on live TV.
The picks of the week, bro. Anyway.
I want you to go first.
I'll go first. So obviously, we lost 2 members of Cinderella this week, one of our favorite bands. So on that note, this record actually, I think Jeff Labar actually may have played on one of the tracks, but it's still relative here because it's Tom Kiefer's first solo record. After Cinderella broke up in 1994, they did tour here and there, but Tom Kiefer always wanted to do a solo record. He had a lot of songs like on the back burner. He finally got to working on these songs back in like 2003. The album didn't come out until 2013. It's called The Way Life Goes. A lot of people don't know in the time period between Heartbreak Station in 1990 and when Still Climbing came out in 1994. The reason for that 4-year break is that Tom Kiefer had blown out his vocal cords. I think even then he had vocal cord surgery. But subsequent to the Still Climbing record, he had, I think, 5 or 6 more vocal cord surgeries, Tom Kiefer.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So it was like, at one point he thought he'd never sing again. So this album's a labor of love. It came out in 2013, The Way Life Goes. And it's some of the best work ever from Tom Kiefer. I mean, there are times where you hear that Cinderella scream, but for the most part, he's singing in a more clean voice. Some scratchiness to it, but not so much of that, she got me hot and bothered. No, not so much of that. Definitely a little more subtle. But a great, great record. Some of the highlights are Different Light, Solid Ground, the Flower Song. Definitely a little more Stonesy, this record. A lot of Rolling Stones influence. But one of to me, the true gems here, the album was re-released with 3 bonus tracks in 2017. And one of the bonus tracks is a duet with Tom Kiefer and Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm of the Cinderella classic Nobody's Fool. And if you haven't heard it, you need to. It's awesome. Lizzie cranks on it as she always does. One of the great vocalists in rock and metal, Lizzie Hale. And it's just an amazing cover. So that's my pick of the week. Tom Kiefer's first solo record, The Way Life Goes. If you haven't listened to it, it's a must listen. Check it out. That's my pick of the week.
I was just going to say, you were playing it earlier, and I wish you could play it, but I know it's copyright reasons we would get shut down. So can't do that. Well, I did think about doing a Cinderella song, but or a Cinderella album, but I figured you were going to do it. And if I were going to do one, it would have been Still Climbing, but obviously we already talked about that. So I had actually been lining this pick of the week up for a long time, but I never got to use it because we've kind of had guests and we weren't doing the pick of the week every week. But my pick of the week happens to be from the band Seven Dust. And my pick of the week is Blackout the Sun, which came out in 2013. Seven Dust is one of those bands for me that I absolutely love. They're totally like up my alley. They're really heavy. They kind of they got every aspect that I enjoy. And I think Seven Dust, it's one of those bands that I don't want to say they're underrated, but not a lot of people talk about them. I don't hear a lot of people say Seven Dust. Wow, they're just they kind of go under the radar. But obviously, their debut album was phenomenal. You had two of their biggest songs ever were on that debut album, Black and Bitch.
Yeah,
but for me,
I love that first record.
I do too. But I'm telling you, listen. I don't know if you've heard of it or heard it, but pop in Black Out the Sun, because I got to be honest with you, it's their 9th studio album. So they kind of put out some stuff after their debut and kind of wasn't, as good. But this album, honest to God, it reminds me of their debut album. Like every track, you pop it in, it's like plug and play from 1 to 10. I mean, every song on the album is great. It's just a very ominous record. It's kind of dark. And that's what I like about Seven Dust, that they kind of got away from that they had on that first record. And this album, to be honest with you, it's their best album since that. So I would say it's their second best album of all time up till now. As I said, there's not one bad track. I'm not going to do what I normally do and, name off tracks. But the first track, it starts with an intro called Memory. And it's just this really ominous acoustic ballad type thing, really dark. And then it kind of just goes into Faithless, which is the opening track. And Faithless is like basically balls of the wall. It's like it's like Black. It's basically almost sounds exactly that type of style. And I'm just blown away by it. I've listened to the album now like 30 times in the last 2 weeks because I had never heard. I kind of was like, what I do with these picks of the weeks, just for anybody that doesn't know, I kind of go back and I try to listen to something that maybe I missed or I haven't heard in a while. And, I just kind of started diving into Seven Dust and I was like, dude, this album kicks ass. So that's my pick of the week, Black Out the Sun. Have you heard it?
I'm sure I heard it here and there. I love the first Seven Dust record. I was really into Seven Dust for the first few records, like Denial. But then I kind of just I don't know. I just didn't I don't know. Like some bands that I listened to at that time, I just kind of didn't keep up with their careers subsequent. So I should go back and check it out, and I will. I'll take your recommendation. I'll peep it.
I mean, I think they're underrated musicians. I mean,
Well, I love Lejean as a vocalist.
Lejean is phenomenal, and his voice just has that. It's kind of unique. You know what I mean? Like. Just his own style. And
yeah, I'll check it out. Anyway, brother, another great show in the books.
Holla.
Yeah, we got a little heavy this week, but it's some stuff that we said needed to be said, in my opinion. And I mean, as always, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of the darker shows we've done, between the deaths that we had to talk about and the mental health stuff, but. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was definitely some heavier content this week. And, dude, looking forward to next week.
Hopefully the listeners enjoyed it or will enjoy it.
Yeah,
the ones who aren't able to check in, but we do appreciate, all your support as we have down here in the bottom. We want to thank everybody for, supporting us and, helping, subscribe to all our pages and, do us a favor, check out our website. We're trying to put more content out. Obviously, Aaron and I both have busy day jobs, but, be on the lookout for some more articles. And, I know Aaron wants to get into to some stuff and, be on the lookout for that. So
www.sportsandmetal.com. Check it out. There's my radio voice. Anyway, dude, love you, Jay. It's been a great show. Everybody check us out next week. Check out the website, www.sportsandmetal.com. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram @sportsandmetal. And as always, we'll see you next week. Rock on.
Peace out.
And that's our show. Tune in next time for more Sports and Metal with Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage. Woo, yeah! Got something to say? Hit us up at sportsandmetal0423 @yahoo.com or on Twitter @sportsandmetal.